Pol.is is and the computational democracy project, something I've been following and watching with admiration for quite a long time now. But the way we're going to do this conversation, obviously, there's a bit to share and show and understand how the project works, and we'll get Colin to. I think you're planning to share screen a little bit and tell us about some of the latest updates as well. So we'll do some of that. But we're also aiming to make this a human conversation as well, like not just the how to. We'll balance a little bit and make sure we get an understanding of how Pol.is works and how it's been used and how you might use it. But I also want to have a bit of a conversation with Colin about how he got to where he is, where he's come from, and why he's doing what he's doing. So just to set expectations, we're not going to be doing a kind of a full open workshop on teaching. You'll have to get a bit deeper into the computational democracy universe for that one, but we will do a bit of it. Okay, folks. Well, as people keep arriving, I'll just say a few words to welcome you into the space and give Tamsin, who you will spot in the top corner, a little wave. Tamsin is my colleague and friend working with me in this initiative we call Citizen Collective. We've been going for about 7 or 8 months, experimenting really with creating an online community for those who believe in a future that is built out of a logic that says all of us are smarter than any of us, rather than a logic that says screw everyone and tariff everything, to put not too fine a point on it. And what we are doing, among other things, is a series of what we call spotlight calls, where we celebrate and understand an initiative that speaks to that logic. And today we've got the wonderful, the beautiful Colin Megill from the Computational Democracy Project. He's going to tell us a little bit about Pol.is. The format of the call will be about 40 minutes in conversation between Colin and I, and then we'll go into small group breakout rooms for about 10 minutes, just to give you a chance to chew and reflect and meet one another, because a big part of this work is about forming connections between people, not just about being on broadcast. And then we'll come back into the main room for about 10 minutes to hear a few soundings from those groups, and maybe give Colin a bit of a chance to offer any final thoughts. With admiration for quite a long time now, but the way we're going to do this conversation, obviously, there's a bit to share and show and understand how the project works, and we'll get Colin to. I think you're planning to share screen a little bit and tell us about some of the latest updates as well. So we'll do some of that. But I also where he's come from and why he's doing what he's doing. So just to set expectations, we're not going to be doing a kind of a full open workshop on teaching. You'll have to get a bit deeper into the computational democracy universe for that one, but we will do a bit of it. So I hope that makes sense to everyone. And without further ado, I'll ask Colin to tell us a bit about what this thing is. Colin, why is everybody so excited about it, and what have you been up to?
Yeah, John, thanks so much for having us, and thanks to everybody on the call. Good morning from San Francisco, and really grateful to be here with you all this morning. I'll say that at least first before I dive into the tech.
Good stuff. Well, and so do you want to start us off then, just by show us a little bit of what you've got and what it is, and help us orient this conversation?
Yeah.
So my opening question to Colin is essentially tell us about one of your favorite projects. Give us a bit of a flavor of this thing. Orient us into your universe.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll go through maybe not all, but some of this deck as we go. This is an overview, both technological and philosophical, and then some of where it's going as well. So I'll first say good morning. I'm Colin Megill. I've been working on a technology called Pol.is for the past 13 years. I could say there's a little bit of confusion about the naming, because Pol.is is a website on the internet, but also, of course, it's an open source technology that's installed a lot of places around the world and used a lot of places around the world in an open source way. because of that. It started as a company, a for-profit startup, 2012, 2016, that was socially motivated, socially oriented. And when we found quickly in 2014 the kind of social impact that we thought we might have, we open sourced in 2016 and then turned the thing into a 501c3 nonprofit, and everything converted over to that in 2019. And I was formerly CEO of the startup, and now I'm president of the nonprofit, and that's me. And I'll say a little bit about how I got there, and to John's questions, and we'll start with like what the project actually is. So I like to show this first because this is a particularly a simple example from the participant's view. Pol.is is a tool for participation. It's designed for large-scale participation. So it's designed around the success case. What if everybody wants to participate? This statement was from a conversation that I ran in Italy during their constitutional referendum, actually. But basically, citizens, those participating in the exercise, can come in and submit statements one at a time that are less than 140 characters, kind of old Twitter length. And then those statements go back out to everybody else, and those participants can agree and disagree and pass. And so you can think of it like a survey that's created by the people taking it. There are emergent aspects to it because of that. And the idea is that it's gathering and making meaning of perspectives in one system at scale using machine learning, and that's been the idea for 13 years. So we've been a company that's leveraged, if you can call the older algorithms artificial intelligence or machine learning, but we were here early. And at least we're open source. No matter what you think of the current trends, I could say the tech came out of or was inspired by the Green Movement and Tower Square and Occupy. And so maybe I'll say, John, to make sure we're conversational, this might be a good transition point to pick up the conversation.
I want to just like make sure we're as clear as we can be about what this thing actually is, just before we go a bit further back into the story. So you used the phrase, or I've used the phrase, and I think I got it from you, of a wiki survey, right? So
Totally,
it's a survey that people respond to the statements, but people can also add their own statements into that rotation.
That's right. Yes, that's right.
And do you want to say a little bit, because my understanding is there's sort of two sort of movements to the usefulness of it. This how I've used it, and I can sort of share my example in a little bit. But
sure.
So I've used it in much more humble ways, as you know. But you start with the wiki survey, and people can add their statements in. So you have you have people listening to and responding to each other's viewpoint,
right.
not just to those of a sort of appointed questioner. And then the smart bit is then you map those, right? So you create clusters of respondents.
That's right. That's right. So it starts out with it starts out with and I'll just show you this here. So let's look at the tool. Okay. So yes, you're absolutely right. So we can say let's see. What do you think? What do you think of tariffs? Are they ever a good idea? And so we can say, and then we can say like, let's discuss. Okay, and so from there, I would grab the link and I would paste it in, and that's it. Pol.is is completely free. And so I'm going to go ahead and paste that in, and everybody can come in and participate. It just happens to be a hot topic of the day. And so what you'll see when you come in is the ability to submit a statement and the ability to agree, disagree, and pass. And then those things will, over time, turn into an opinion map. So let's look at what it looks like at the end, since so this is what participants will see while they start. And Pol.is is like as a nonprofit open source tech, it's free to log in. You just do that. You just go to Pol.is, log in, click the create conversation button, put a topic in, put some statements in, and then go. There isn't anything else to do. From there, we can say like, okay, well, here's one at the end. This one was run in New Zealand with the government on and with independent news and professional facilitators on the topic of biodiversity. The reason this conversation's awesome, there's a bunch of New York Times, world press coverage on of this issue, is that it's a really controversial issue at nation scale, and the citizens themselves are not sure what the goal is. And the question is, if we look at one of the most controversial statements, which is here, you can see all the statements which have been submitted as dots, and then all the way over on the right here, you can see the most controversial one. The thing that the population isn't settled on is whether, it's just the statement, the ecosystem that existed prior to 200 years ago is gone forever. All ecosystems, indigenous or not, must be encouraged. Basically, mammals were introduced. When mammals were introduced, it caused a lot of havoc, and what we consider an invasive species in New Zealand, so to speak, this would determine what the government's policies and goals are. So identifying consensus, which is over here on the left, like what can everybody get behind, right? Like the government should direct the agricultural industry to both improve biodiversity and develop sustainability. That concept of finding clusters, finding groups of people that voted similarly, and then seeing what differentiated them, and then seeing where they came together, that is effectively at the heart of the tool. That's basically the core of Pol.is.
And what the way this works, if you take screen down, and I might share a little way I've used it just on this as well. But the way this works is, as I understand, is because you have everyone submitting statements that are meaningful to them. Do you mind stopping the screen share just for a moment, just so we can come back to?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Yes.
So because everyone is submitting their statements, you're getting really into the nuance of it, right? And people are using the language that's meaningful to them. And then you're seeing kind of batches of statements emerge and clusters emerge that give you a real sense, and then you can sort of isolate the ones that are really key to potentially to have face-to-face conversation about as well. So I'm just going to share so people understand, and I love the way you just started new Pol.is and just showed just how simple it can be, right? Just immediately throwing something up. I'm just going to share in the same spirit one that I did actually on a recent conference I was at, and I was hosting a group. I was holding the space for a group of about 100 people, and it became clear quite quickly that there was a bit of tension in the group, and we couldn't quite work out why and where exactly the tension was. So I created a Pol.is. It was a couple of day conference. I created a Pol.is overnight and sent it out, just really saying, let's sort of get a sense of the agreements and tensions in this. It was called Earth One. I won't go into the details of this. It was a bit weird, but as you see, people submitted statements, and some of the statements are things like this. Every fellow who comes on, and they could submit more. But then this was the really crucial thing. These opinion groups were so useful to me because, and what you can see here is one of the statements in particular, even with only sort of 30 odd people responding. And I know, Colin, you'll want to emphasize just how huge the numbers can be in this kind of thing, and actually how much more effective it is when the numbers are big. But even with a small number of people responding, we were able to see that there was this one statement down here: times are urgent, we have to create real outputs now, even if they're imperfect. That was super divisive in the group, that almost half people completely strongly agreed with, and the other half almost entirely disagreed with. And really interestingly, there was another statement that was times are urgent, but that means we have to slow down or risk making the mistakes of the past, that actually was kind of a bit conflicted across both. So it was clearly like the nuance came through, that it was this one that some people were really determined that we just had to move. That was a source of disagreement, And what we were able to do in that context, just so like one of the uses we made was actually because we were in an in-person space, we were able to create a spectrum line, and we said, if you really agree with that statement, stand at one end. If you really disagree, stand at the other.
Yeah.
And then hear voices into that. So just to share another, like the simplicity of that, but then you scale up to 30,000 people taking part, and you got something at another scale entirely. Do you want to say a little bit more about that New Zealand? What was the original question in the New Zealand process, and who ran it?
Yeah, great question. So the biodiversity conversation was run by Simon Wright in New Zealand on behalf of the Ministry of Conservation. Um, I'm going to grab the case study link for you so that anybody can read the follow up and kind of conclusions if they'd like. Just a moment, and then you'll have it. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, so here's some background about that. I'll paste it into the chat, and I'll say that the DOE. I'm going to paste a link here to. Well, I'll actually add that at the end. Let me not hang on that. But that case study link is a good start.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
So I think I'm gonna pause there. Tamsin has also popped the one pager she created after she used Pol.is at I think at the school gate. Didn't you use it, Tamsin? Was that your?
Yeah.
Nice work.
Food at school.
Food
Simple.
at school.
Yeah.
So the uses you can make. But I want to, if we can, Colin, I'll take you back to your slides and tell us a bit more of the story. Or you don't have to share the slides if you don't want to, but tell us a bit more of the story of where this came from. You were starting to talk about the green movement and Occupy.
Yeah, I'll just speak naturally. So the idea back then, in 2000, 2010, 2011, before technology broke ground in 2012, was, okay, social media is mobilizing people, but is it giving them tools for coherence, for coming together, for finding differences across divides, for drafting things together that matter to them, for finding consensus, and the idea that there could be tools, or at least tools a tool that provided one link in the chain that solves some part of the pipeline for citizens to be able to do that was really interesting, and I would say that very speculative at the time. There was really it wasn't clear that there was a better tool than let's say Reddit, which is just upvoting. To get really specific about the tech, there were upvoting sites, but the algorithms that they used, and I can get really kind of specific into that stuff, but I'll at a high level say there are a number of technological references, including like the Delphi method, which is either pre-internet, send scientists out, cards, and then have them write an estimate on a card and justify it, copy them and send them to every other scientist, and eventually have them over many stages converge. There were other, examples of kind of like, well, how do you get people to coordinate, at scale, no matter how many of them there are. And I think that was one of the most important kind of fundamental assumptions that we had for the entire tech. It had to work in as many places at once, simultaneously, and it had to work with as many people at once simultaneously. It had to be at kind of internet scale, and it had to be real time.
And where were you at this point? Were you out on the streets in Occupy, or where were you?
That's a good question. So I had actually become a farmer in after college. I graduated into the financial crisis, and I left. I got a 200-hour yoga certification. The truth, John, is that I got accepted to a Zen monastery while I was in college, and I did not go. And I feel slightly more self-conscious speaking about that, as there is a very popular TV show on right now where this is the entire plot. When I did complete a 200-hour yoga certification at the time, and then I moved out into the middle of the San Juan Islands in Washington State, and I farmed for a full year in a small organic farm in a beautiful agricultural community out there, and also my oldest son was born out there. So I would say that, like, and I was a teacher for a few years as well. I taught at an independent school out there while I was figuring out what I wanted to do. So that was my out of college between 2007 and 2011 or so. I was a farmer and a teacher.
And how did that transition happen?
Well, I went to school for international relations, so I was writing out there. So part of what I made the decision in my earlier life to do was to pursue enough independence that I could just write. And so I spent the time writing and thinking about kind of the problems that I had that I really wanted to spend a lot of my time on. And I think, I mean, to make it, you asked about me specifically and where I was physically, and that is perhaps a funny answer, that I was a farmer out on an island after an international relations degree. But I really, the way that I really like to talk about that is why I was looking, what I was doing, I would say personally, was trying to find something that I thought would be a really deep problem to work on for a really long time, that I maybe wouldn't finish, during my lifetime, but would be really interesting to work on the entire time. And so the thing that I did, I did um, uh, I did set off working on this problem with an intention of staying on it for a really, really long time.
Yeah.
Hopefully, being able to productively contribute something, incrementally over the course of a really long period of time. And I've also kind of taken the technology from that kind of approach of, like, because it's open source, is it going to be around for a long time?
Yeah.
And so. I would say, the technology didn't begin open source, and I do credit the team in Taiwan for many discussions ideologically about why it should be open source and when at any given time. They were really instrumental in that, and so I want to make that one caveat clear. But I would say that that the problem of human coordination and making meaning and giving the public the agenda setting back was really compelling to me from a kind of can we flip power? Can we do it? Can we flip power? Can we get, from my position during being out there, I was observing Occupy. There were
Right.
local groups, but of course it was a movement. From my perspective, the thing which has really driven me and that I'm really passionate about is that the agenda setting mechanism is captured by unelected institutions, which are political parties. My driving motivation the entire time in building Pol.is and in donating an just enormous amount of labor over the years, because that's how open source goes. You've got to find some passionate edge to stay involved with it. That's the trick to it.
So I just want to underline this agenda setting point, because that's what you're talking about there is
Yes.
Not just how do we listen to people when we have this, how do existing structures of power listen to people when they have in some way decided what the conversation should be, but how do you allow the thing that needs to be discussed to emerge from people? Is that a fair way of expressing it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And this is what Audrey Tang, when I interviewed her in London, has talked about. Broad listening, I think, is the phrase she'd used, rather than broadcasting.
Yeah, I think that when I spoke in Taiwan, the way that I phrased it was listening at scale. Pol.is is listening at scale is the way that we framed it when we kind of had our original lander, way back when. Yeah,
take us a bit deeper into the Taiwan relationship. How did that come about? When did it start?
Great question. So Chi Liang Cao is the CL Cao is the founder of GovZero and was basically working in a group called Pol.is, and that was James McKinney, and so out of Canada, I believe, and so the original contact came through their civic tech community, and the civic tech community had a really exciting, let's say, like a really exciting angle, obviously, because it was it was in the middle of the sunflower movement. And so the sunflower movement in general has the sunflower movement had barricaded parliament and all of the story that people are generally familiar with, but I'll briefly retell here, which is that the background and context is that Taipei is a very technologically advanced city, and media and government are all in the same place, like in London. I think it has a very multidisciplinary feel. People are in many different domains, unlike maybe San Francisco or DC in the States. So it's a very interesting place for civic innovation in general. And once the civic tech community kind of tried it out, what happened is that it got pulled into an experimental participatory process that Audrey was running, which was obviously completely extraordinary, and kind of the rest is history from Audrey speaking around the world. But vTaiwan was a very early machine learning enabled participatory process. Pol.is served as a kind of scale up feature, so thousands of people could discuss, and in the first and probably most famous case, the Uber regulations that then became law, and to find consensus among the Uber drivers and the taxi drivers, and to get rid of some of the straw man issues. So in other words, we're going to say there's no we would say to make sure that there's no well, false debates would be one way to put it, and to find the bold consensus that people can really get behind would be another.
I think that's, yeah. And Tamsin was just posting in the chat this thing of actually when you create this kind of space, it's possible for quieter voices, more reflective voices to seek to put their views into the space and be heard and come up. And I think that when you combine that with the nuance that comes from so many voices putting statements forward and then them being able to kind of rise up, you have something much stronger and richer. I think. What can you do you have a kind of, I mean, I guess maybe the work in Taiwan is your favorite example of this being used at scale, or do you have a kind of, and particularly in the spirit of this sort of shifting power moment, when you felt like this is what I want, this is what I was dreaming of with this thing?
Well, there's a lot of those. I could share something.
Go on. Tell us something we haven't heard before. Go on. And
yeah, I don't think you've seen this one. This is just one step in a process of building Pol.is 2. But I'll briefly show you. This is a very large conversation that we ran. This was in Pakistan. It was with the UNDP, and it ran with 9,000 people. 9,000 comments and 18,000 people over the course of a year. If we consider gathering over long periods of time what people are thinking about when they're specifically asked, what's on your mind in terms of politics, there are a range of issues run 4 years ago back during COVID. But what I can say, for instance, is that if I zoom in on, for instance, government accountability issues, the number of say, this is, by the way, this is in Pol.is within a couple of weeks, but not at this hour. But I'll briefly say that if we look at the difference between, for instance, restrictions on military power, right, and equality under equal treatment under law and law enforcement and social justice and court reform, court delay. There's a broad range of things that were discussed in the country over time, and I would say, as a foundation, this is the kind of scale, to be able to leave it open for thousands and thousands of people over long periods of time to discuss many different issues, to move agenda setting into the public's hands. And so, since you asked, I would say that is a map that when we look at things like that, and every one of those is a statement that was submitted by someone in Pakistan participating in the UNDP's exercise. This is the kind of thing that, to me, serves as a foundation for a next generation of politics beyond parties.
And so, what exactly was the question that was asked? What was the headline of that survey?
generally the question is what needs to be addressed. They're usually very in those cases they're very general, and they're run for a long time with and it's the prompt is general, political, and the domain is then geographic, and so the other aspect of that is then making meaning of all of the responses that come through, which is our most active area of research and development. Yeah, right.
Okay,
I'll pass it back to you.
let's turn there in just a moment. But I just want to so for people who might want to experiment with this in their own communities at a more local scale,
Mm-hmm.
what advice would you give? I mean, there's quite a few questions in the chat. Do I need to really understand data science? Do I how would you?
Great question. Yeah, absolutely. So the answer is that we are bringing the required knowledge down in the next generation of the software. So Pol.is 2 is launching soon, and in the coming weeks. And Pol.is 2's primary goal is to need to know less data science to be confident with the results of Pol.is. And I'm happy to show a little bit of that, but it's in general, the goal for us on the software side is to give you something that you feel confident about, that we can stand behind, even though it's running at scale, and all you need to do is log in and start voting.
And do you want to show a little bit of that, or do you want to?
Yeah,
or are you ready
sure.
to do it? Go on.
No, absolutely. So let's so let's go for it. So let me grab let's see.
And maybe give us a little sense as what the question is that you're sharing with people, and then take us through to the thing that's being generated as a result.
Great question. Okay, so great suggestion. So I'll say, with Pol.is, and I'll just take a look at the let's just go back to biodiversity. The conversation. This is a great example. So the conversation that we've been sharing, is here, was based on this conversation the Department of Conservation ran. And
so the topic. So just to be clear, zoom in. So the topic was what needs to be done to protect and restore New Zealand's biodiversity.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And
Right.
This is connected to regulations and actions surrounding use of poison, but even more broadly, the goals of the population itself. So
Right.
do we believe that we can, and do people agree, please stop poisoning our lovely forest from the sky with deadly poison? As you can see, Group B, which is 371 people, disagreed with that. So this is the controversial nature of the issue, is that people believe that possums and rats and things like that are attacking native birds are invasive species, and defining it as such means that there needs to be aggressive control policy. But the policy is, of course, very controversial itself. It's a very difficult ecological situation. And so anyway, if we scroll down to the groups, and what they felt, we can see a glimpse of what separated them, but we can kind of get a sense of that at the gate. Some people believe that that poison should be used, and some that it shouldn't.
Could you zoom in a bit, Colin, so we can maybe see these statements a bit better?
Of course. Yes. Is that a little easier?
One little bit more, maybe. One more. Perfect.
Yep. So we could see, for instance, Group B believes that that biodiversity is in crisis. Group A is split on that issue, and Group A believes, while indigenous biodiversity should be given priority in protected areas, the rights and incomes of property owners must not be compromised on private land. So there's a land rights issue here as well, versus maybe public land. Native forests and soil plants to be protected from browsing mammals, to maintain healthy forest water quality and reduce. So almost everyone who voted on this statement, which was 56 people, voted out of 371 did agree with that statement. Now, this in general is what Pol.is has been for many years, for 13 years. And we can see if we sort by the group informed consensus, you can see here that the statements that are available here the statements that are available here are the consensus statements ranked by the fact that they were agreed on by both
Strength
groups.
of consensus, yeah.
That's right. Even though there were groups, this form, we worked with Twitter to build community notes for about a year before their acquisition, and this metric is the foundation of community notes. We called it group aware consensus. In their paper, the terminology they settled on was academic terminology called bridge-based ranking, but same concept, if more general. The idea of looking across differences to find consensus, and then looking at the
areas of disagreement and how diverse the people holding those views are.
That's right. To find one statement which kind of rises to the community note, and the community note is one statement out of many submitted. So if you're familiar with community notes, you know also this is something I'm happy to talk about. It's quite a large and
I'm going to roll you back in, Colin, because community notes, we can post another link in the chat for people who want to check it out. It's a really fascinating thing that is a very powerful contribution to fact checking and quality of information in the world of social media at the moment. It's well worth looking into. But I love that what I think for these purposes, we're really seeing that. I think hopefully you can see what you do as a result of Pol.is is you're able to, from a whole range of comments and statements that people know are generated by each other, you can bring out the 4 or 5 that really are the nub of the disagreement and the nub of any tensions, but also really see what things actually everyone really agrees on. And I think when you have that, if you think about the current context that we're in our democracies, like it's the people who are angriest or whatever, it tends to be the most divisive views that get most airtime. And rather than necessarily us understanding, there is actually a good degree of consensus about a whole a whole range of things, and then being able to hold the space for the difficult conversations to be where the difficult conversations actually are. And that for me is the spirit of this. And
that's a beautiful way to put it.
I'm sort of jumping across because I really want to send people into some breakout groups and give them a chance to sort of chat and reflect, and then come back with some thoughts. But what I think is so powerful about that is the idea that actually by listening, by opening up to these sorts of processes, we can actually get to an understanding of where we really need to hold our conversations rather than just believing that one another are so divided. And I think
that's a beautiful way to put it, John.
It's a really important point. There's there's loads of questions coming through at the level of is there how does privacy get managed in this? I'm gonna invite Colin to sort of how the clustering algorithms change. We've got a whole range of people in this room, from community organizers who I'm sure are kind of most excited by playing with Pol.is on the level that I did in my conference, to some real kind of to some folks with really deep understanding of the technology. And while you're in the rooms, I'm going to invite Colin to surf back through the chat. We'll keep him in the main room. Okay, folks, we're back in the room. I think the way we're going to do this, I think we're just having a little chat with Colin about what we can usefully do and learn together from this, and what we can take into our local communities, because Citizen Collective is most fundamentally a community of for people doing face-to-place community kind of level work. So I'm gonna there are answers to a lot of the questions that have been raised about GDPR and privacy and mobbing and so forth that we're going to get Colin to. We're going to send 1 or 2 of those questions to Colin afterwards. If there are questions that came up in your rooms that you'd like to raise, I'm going to also invite you to post those in the chat. We're going to harvest them. Colin's very generously said he'll sort of have a look over those and share things back. But in the meantime, I really want to invite him to say a little word about to close us out, about the work in Grimsby.
What's the action that people on this call can take? Is how do we get our politicians to even entertain this as an idea?
Are you familiar with the case study that happened in Grimsby?
Because it came from a community organisation that was outside of the council, but they worked with the whole local community to open a question about a vision for the future of the town, using Pol.is, that got thousands of people involved, thousands of comments, and actually produced some really interesting ideas and focal points that are then being built. And this feels like something that actually at a scale and a kind of use that many of those who are in Citizen Collective could use.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I just wanted to share just a success story, and the team, wonderful people, who used Pol.is and asked the city of Grimsby to imagine, imagine. John, I want to say I see some of your language here, so I just want to throw out that seems like a success. I could say, like, the people who ran this really put a ton of effort and time into it. It was really wonderful. They have an entire YouTube background about things, everything from like tutorials of how to use it to coverage of people participating. They use it as a focal point, and they ran a really nice. They ran a really nice conversation. The outcome was that they transitioned it to in-person work as well. And I'm just going to grab the okay, and grab just a moment. Yeah, Grimsby. So this was Grimsby together, and there's a bunch of they showed the moderated comments and all things like that. They gave a whole bunch of FAQs, and I left this link in there. But if we look at some of the data if we look at some of the topics that they ended up discussing, it was very broad. It went all over. Some around homelessness and social issues, and some around economic revitalization, and even specific areas like certain streets or areas. And then a whole bunch of comments on a Viking festival, and I think maybe perhaps I'll end there. Because these are the kinds of things that are really important in local areas, and they're the kinds of things that people care about and want to talk about in real places. And that's the goal, is to turn back the conversation. Technology, the open source technology that turns the conversation back to the people who are having the conversation and the people who care about the places they live in.
Hopefully, folks, this gives you a view into what Pol.is is and might be. It's a tool that I find super helpful, even at small scales and with a little bit of input. But and Colin, as you can tell, is a very genial and wonderful person to have around, and he's posted his email in the chat as well. So if you have specific questions, he's made himself available to hear more. But Tamsin, do you want to close us out and just give us a flavour of the rest of what's coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have the next event that we have within Citizen Collective is on Wednesday, the 30th of April, which will be our last Wednesday of every month. So that is our Citizen Workshop hosted by Dave and Tanya, where anybody is welcome to join us. It's normally in the evening in the UK time. We don't record those calls because they're kind of immersive workshops where each month we focus on a different kind of skill. So we will circulate via the mailing list the details of that one in the next week or so. And then we also have, we'll put a link to our Luma account where all of these are listed, but we also have John's next spotlight call, similar to this one, but this is with the team at Hastings Commons. So it's a community-led regeneration project in Hastings that seeks to challenge the traditional, I guess, neighbourhood with a real alternative. So I know John is incredibly passionate about the team there and everything that they're doing to help citizens actively shape their neighbourhood. So maybe they are using Pol.is, and we don't know. And if they're not, they maybe will be by the end of the month.
So maybe by this time tomorrow, because I'm going to see them tomorrow. I will also point people towards I'm hosting an event in London on Monday with the political philosopher Erica Benner, whose book Adventures in Democracy is now out in paperback. That is also available for live stream. But folks, we always try and make sure we end on time. So I hope this has been a good introduction for you. Thank you so much, Colin, for joining us and getting up early in the morning. And I hope you made some
Thank you so much, everybody.
And we'll see you all on another call soon.